what's strange is to realize all of a sudden that we're on the edge of culture. It's like I'm noticing, like I'm seeing the type of person that I would have recognized before as being the punks or these kind of edge of culture people who can see where it's going and are making the first adopters, I guess they call them. That I'm noticing that they're becoming Christians or becoming at least more traditional Christians, liturgical Christians, because liturgy, they intuitively understand that there's something about the world which is magical, and that there has to be a ritual form to it. There has to be something, there has to be this form that is binding reality together. Sometimes it's not explicitly understood. It's sometimes more intuitive. And then they can see liturgical life and ritual life as part of that. So I don't know if that's something that you've thought about yourself.
Yeah, no, a lot, actually. I mean, that's the other thing I discovered with Orthodoxy, is that the liturgy is so powerful. The central ritual is so powerful. And again, Western Christianity didn't have any rituals in it. Or at least it does, obviously, but not that I'd ever seen as being very significant, because the Reformation changes the role of a church from being a center for ritual to being a sort of center for moral teaching.
Yeah,
you take out the ritual. I mean, you still probably do the Eucharist and stuff, but it's a bit by the by. Really, what you're getting is a lecture, and that's what I always thought Christianity was. That it's a lecturer who tells you what Jesus wants you to do.
Yeah.
But as soon as you experience a ritual, then you think, oh my goodness me, this is what it's supposed to be about. God's in the room. This is what's supposed to be happening here. And again, a lot of the work I've done with mythologists and reading of myths from cultures around the world, a culture can't survive without central rituals. And they're always rituals which are designed to take people to the divine in some way, beyond ourselves. And we haven't got that. And even our Christianity hasn't had that for a long time, in Protestant countries anyway. And so that's a major loss. And it's one of these things that people don't even know they've lost.
Yeah.
I grew up with not knowing I'd lost this. It's a bit like initiation ceremonies. That's another thing traditional cultures have. You'd be initiated from childhood to adulthood. In a serious culture, we don't have that. And so we're perpetually in arrested development. All the adults are behaving like children.
Yeah.
And the aspiration of a 75-year-old is to still look like a 30-year-old. That's, because we haven't been initiated, but we don't know we're missing that either. And, you mentioned that the sort of woke culture thing. I often think that social justice is, like you say, it's like the Sermon on the Mount, but without love or forgiveness or God. So it's like all the stuff that you actually need to leaven that strict moral message that you get from Christ is taken out. And once you have a kind of moral teaching without love or any higher purpose, you have a tyranny potentially. But at the heart of it is people trying to make something that they think they need, because they don't know what they've lost. Yeah. And there's so many lost people, we've all been there, floundering about thinking something is really missing. There's a massive void here.
Yeah.
But we have no idea how to fill it. And I think that's where we are. But like you say, that's a lesson that's given to us. It's probably a lesson we need to learn. So that's probably the question, isn't it? How do we learn that lesson then? What do we draw from it?
Yeah, and how can we? Because I think a lot of people are going to learn that lesson one way or another. One of the things we saw in 2020 is a return of a liturgical action. All the George Floyd protests, the fact that they were worldwide, which is just, it's just insane to think that something like that would cause such a worldwide phenomena. But it was really because it was a religious action. It was based on a sacrifice, which was experienced as a catharsis by people. And, this kind of flowing out of religious feeling, and then going out into the street and processing and chanting and kneeling and doing all these religious gestures. And so it's coming back. Religion is coming back. There's nothing we can do to stop it right now. All the new atheists, that they're wrong. They're wrong about how reality works. And it's playing out. And the question is, how is it going to play out? Because the sacred or the desire for the sacred has a very dark tendency. And if you read, I've been talking about the Bacchae for some reason many times recently, but if you think of this kind of this image of the sacred out of control, which you see in the Bacchae, where there's this ripping apart, right? This sparagmos of the people. This is something which is right on our horizon. If there isn't this balance which Christ brought, because that aspect of the sacred is there in the Christian ritual as well. The communion is scandalous. Communion has something of the human sacrifice in it. but it's taken up into something more, right? It's taken up, it's not let out into its extreme where it becomes a form of insane scapegoating, or this kind of destruction of this ripping apart of the king, or whatever it is that goes on in this religious tendency we have. It's brought into something higher.